Welcome back again, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Here's the first installment of my new Styrene Diaries, a set of features I'm going to do to complement some of the diecast builds that I've done. I'm not intending on changing my channel, it's just some of the things people have requested. So here's the first one. It's how to construct some interiors. There's a number of parts I've made out of styrene, subscribers have picked up on, and again have showcased them on Instagram. Very simple, very easy to make once you know the products themselves and how they all go together. With the exception of this little replica palette here that I've made out of some coffee cup stirrers from McDonald's and Costa Coffee. Everything else you see before you have made out of styrene. So the main backbone to it is it's a liquid form of, well, it's not technically glue. It's called methyl ethyl ketone. You're probably laughing at how I've pronounced that. I just call it ethyl. So if we call it ethyl, we all know what I'm talking about. It's a liquid form. It's harmful. It is flammable, so take a lot of care. It welds the two products together. It melts them, creates this little plastic weld and sticks it. It's not glue per se, but it's a bonding agent of a fashion that welds it all together. As I say, it is quite harsh. The parts that you can see that I'm just showing you on my mat is from spillages, so it can be very harmful if you're not very careful with it, so please take care. Now onto the actual material itself. I tend to use evergreen scale models. There is other ones out there. I'm in no way affiliated to them. It's just my preferred choice. You can get them in different thicknesses, different sections. You can get tubes, rods, squares, L-beams, H-beams, I-beams, all sorts of products to keep any model happy. You can make literally anything out of them. It's just down to your imagination. Here I'm just showing you the different thicknesses again of L sections you can get, and again with all the different angles there's different thicknesses, different lengths. And the best bit about this scale is all the offcuts I always keep to one side, and the interior I'm about to show you is made purely all out of the offcuts. So this little bag here has probably been keeping me going for donkey's years. So how did I get from that to this? Let's get cracking with it. So first of all, it's just basically going around the original chassis just to get the size, shape and form. And all cars are different. Some you can mimic the actual whole platform altogether. Others you can actually just replicate a small tiny piece. It all depends on whatever you're doing. So here all I'm simply doing is scoring the material. Depending on the thickness, it can take a couple of goes at. Other times it takes literally one cut through and away you go. I number it front to right, or label it should I say, front and rear, because many a time I've got it back to front, upside down, left to right, and before I know it I've made a complete hash of it. So it all gets painted at the end of the day, so I always tend to label things up as I'm going along. I have a lovely little chopping board here which I got from Micromark, I believe, in the States, and I'll put the link in the description. Great for replicating the lengths of the cuts or angles of the cuts that you need. So once I've got the size of the chassis the main base of the chassis that I need, so literally a matter of using this little chopping board and chopping up these little square sections to bond initially to the first part. So here this is in real time. It's literally just wiping the two mating faces together, and as quick as that it sticks together. Now the styrene material itself, it's referred to as styrene. It's a high impact plastic. It's the same material that's widely used in all model making, so all your Airfix kits, Tamiya kits, Revel monogram kits, it's all made of this stuff. It's referred to as styrene. It is a form of polystyrene, but as you can see it's much different to what we know as polystyrene, and that is, to me, is the packaging, the little balls that are all compressed together. Once you start cutting it, it all gets static all over it and you can't shake the damn stuff off. But this is a compressed high impact plastic version of styrene. The technicalities of it, the chemical makeup of it, I don't pretend to know all that about. You could find out the exact makeup of this product by looking on some of the sites like Evergreens. There's another one, Plastruct, I think it's called, Plastistruct. Again, a very good manufacturer of this type of material. So all I'm doing now is working around the car. I'm making some wheel arches now, and it's not an exact science doing all this. It's a bit of suck it and see as you go along. Very, very easy to cut. As I say, you haven't got to cut all the way through. It will, once you've scored it enough, break away. Very easy to sand, very easy to manipulate and bend and form. And again, with a bit of care, as quick as you're seeing now, it's stuck in a matter of seconds and very, very strong. You don't need a lot of the liquid on there. In fact, if you put too much liquid on, it won't take as good as that. And just to show you the different types of thicknesses, for the main chassis I've used a 1.5 mil, and the section I'm going to use now to make the inner parts of the wheel arches is 0.3 of a mil, and it's almost like paper. Very, very easy to cut this one. You can trim it with scissors and it treats it just like paper. But when they get this thin, I will warn you, using a ruler sometimes it will wobble all over the place. So if you're a bit sparse on material or using it for the first time, as I've just done now with this ruler, is flip it to another edge. Otherwise it will literally whip from underneath you and you've wasted a piece, or you could cause damage to yourself, as it was just about to do then. But I've scored it enough just to put a little bit of pressure on and snap it like that. Very easy to bend. With this one, it's thin enough to hold it in place once you've put this bonding agent on. And what I've just done there is I've put it on the mating faces. Usually you just put it against in place and then wipe it across the edges, because putting it on the mating faces sometimes doesn't always work. If you're quick enough and don't put enough liquid on, you can get away with it. Sometimes you have to sit there for a short while. So now I'm just mating it against the faces, which will take a lot quicker and hold stronger. And as I said, with a piece of scissors, you can trim off any excess with little to no drama at all. Thicker pieces of material, if you wanted to do some bends. Direct heat, it melts too quick. If you're going to use direct heat, I tend to use a tea light or a candle. It's easier if you use hot water actually. Using direct heat, there is no easy way around it. It will always melt if you're not too careful, no matter how far or how close you use. I have seen lots of people using matches and lighters and so forth, but I tend to use hot water to make any bends on thicker material. Here I'm just doing the rear end of the interior, and it's not an exact replica of a Capri. In fact, this particular model that I'm doing it for, the Zakspeed Capri, it was a silhouette race car anyway, so it was a space frame chassis and all the internals were bespoke anyway. It was just the bodywork that made it look like a Capri. But I'm just really mimicking now parts of what would be the chassis of a real car, with some of the ribbed sections in the chassis which they used for strengthening the car. Putting in a tunnel now where the prop shaft would have gone. And again, it's such a tight fit I've done on this. I could have just left this without putting any of ethyl on there, but I'm going to wipe a little bit of ethyl on it. See if she likes it. Bit of belt and braces and all that. As you can see, it's very quick and easy to use. I don't tend to wear gloves, I'll be honest. It feels very cold to touch if you do get it on your skin. But if it's a plastic based product or rubber, or any form of plastic for that matter, it does melt, so hence just be careful of where you're using it. Easy to shape, as you can see, and sand. I'm just making a dashboard now, and the beauty about making a little replica interior like this, there's lots of parts that get hidden, so I haven't got to go to town and make this completely nice and neat on the front face, or where my left finger is, because when the car comes back down on top, the body shell, it's all hidden under the bonnet anyway, so if anything it's more of a place for the body to rest on. Here's a little tube section which I'm going to make a steering wheel now from. I probably could have gone a little bit thinner, if I'm honest, on this car. And for the centre piece, I've just used a little offcut of one of the sheets to put into the centre to make the full steering wheel. Some of the finer pieces that you can get, again it's a piece of rod in the Evergreens product lineup, which is a 1/2 mil rod. And now just by shaving off the tops of it, you can make some replica gauges. And again, I'm using the method of putting it directly on the mating face, which again sometimes doesn't always take, but if you're quick enough it will work. But afterwards it is always good just to put a little bit more against the mating faces afterwards, just so it will weld each other together. And here you can see it's starting to take shape. Very, very strong stuff. Here I'm just putting in a little bucket seat which is made of resin, which I got from edition 6. I've put some links again in the bottom of this video, which again I'll talk a little bit more about this product in my video on the Zakspeed Capri, which this interior is based on. So if you want to see a bit more on that, please take a look at that other video. And here we're just seeing it all come together, and I'm basing it against the original interior that I got from this Capri. So size for size it's equal. Starting to get a bit more detail inside than the original. And it's always good to keep offering it up as you're going along through this project, purely just to see that it all fits together. Onto the roll cage now, and I'm literally going to work around it from the outside to begin with, just to see roughly where the bends are, to get the profile right of the car. And then once I take the body back off, I can just trim back any excess with a pair of modelling scissors, or nail scissors work very well. Some manicure scissors, they work very, very well. And you can get it to sit and fit quite nicely. It is often easy to get it as best as you can on one end and then bond it together, and then once that's had a few seconds to get dry and secure, you can work on the other end a little bit more freely, knowing that the front or the other end is secure, if that makes sense. So you haven't got to try and balance it all up from all angles, because it can get very fiddly. Even with a set of helping hands, it can get very fiddly. So here I'm showing you the importance of keep offering what you're doing up to the car, because now with the windscreen in, you can see where it could foul against this roll bar. So if it does foul at this stage, you can take it back off, trim it back down, etc, etc. And now I'm simply going to work round and make the internal sections of the roll cage. And again, I'm not taking this off any specific design that I've seen, and it's certainly not based off the exact Zakspeed Capri which this car I'm doing it for is on. So it's whatever takes my fancy that I'm doing it on. It's always best to get as tight a fit as possible, so it's almost self-jigging, if you like. And then it's just a matter of literally wiping the liquid on just to finish it off and melt it all together. So now I'm just finishing off with a little part of a replica fuel cell that was in the back of the car. And the beauty about making these products is you can let your mind run wild. You can add as much detail as you want, as less detail as you want, parts on the real car, whatever you want to do. A quick spray over now with some primer, and I'm using white primer to complement the outside of the car that I'm basing this on, but it makes it a lot easier to obviously paint now the final car, which I always use acrylic paints with. I tend to start off with the flatter matte colours to begin with and build up with the gloss ones there and after, purely because I don't want to make it all monotone looking. I try to add a bit of texture with the different types of paints and plastics and metals that would be in a real car. So obviously flat colours for the seats to mimic cloth and material, and then the glossier paints for parts of the metal, like I'm doing now for the aluminium roll bar, or steel roll bar should I say. Tend to go in a little bit and add a bit more detail on the dials. So finally now, though this isn't styrene related, it is related in part to the interior that I'm building, and indeed interiors when I do build them, is I'm just going to use some vinyl sticker cut down into a little slither to make some replica seatbelt harnesses. And I use it because it's very easy to conform to. Obviously being self-adhesive, it'll stick down quite well inside, and it's easy to manipulate and often will stick straight away. If it doesn't, you can add a little blob of super glue and it will stick down a little bit better, but can be a little bit tricky. As you can see, I've missed it first time there trying to cut it, but it will, with a little persuasion, as I'll show you now, stick okay, like so. And then just to finish off, some final little details, I just put a little bit of paint on to replicate some little buckles, and there we have one of my finished interiors. Fairly straightforward to do. As I say, the material lasts and goes on and on and on, you get lots out of it. Probably took me about 3 hours in total to do, all in all. But there we have the finished one. There it is sitting now on the Corgi chassis, and there it is finally inside. So there you go. The channel isn't swapping over to a model making channel anytime soon, so don't worry, normal service will resume. These will just keep popping up now and again in the little Styrene Diaries features that I'm going to do. So I hope that was informative. I hope you enjoyed it. Back to my normal diecast restorations.